Hello everyone. Today I would like to discuss the topic of why churches give so little to charity, or more specifically, why Christian churches give so little. These numbers are from a survey in 2013 by the Evangelical Christian Credit Union. The average church gave just 1% of its annual budget for charitable giving for both local and national charitable causes. And on average, 2% of church budgets were used for international charitable causes, giving a grand total of 3% of the average church budget being used for charity. And it's rather interesting how foreign charity seems to be more popular than local charitable giving. And even for evangelism or outreach efforts, which means efforts to bring new members into the church and spreading Christianity, only 3% of church budgets on average were used for this activity. Of course, evangelism isn't charity per se. This is how churches grow, but it just goes to show, even for outreach purposes, very little money is actually being spent. More likely, this is being done on a volunteer basis, such as church outreach members walk around parking lots or shopping malls and whatnot, or at least that has been my observation. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but I've always wondered why more churches don't have, say, pizza parties or something similar to attract new members or just as a way of giving back to the community. But they just don't do much of that either. At least not for the average church anyway. But anyhow, getting back to the charity aspect, there are a few interesting things to point out. The first is the size of the different churches. A large church has 2,000 to 5,000 members, a medium-sized church 425 to 2,000, a small church 200 to 424, and a micro church less than 200 members. And next is their yearly budgets. A large church has a budget between $20 million to $94 million. Wow. A medium-sized church, $6 million to $20 million. That's still pretty high. And even for a small church, $1 million to $6 million for a yearly budget. And a micro church is less than $1 million per year. And for the larger churches, at $20 to $94 million, granted most churches do not have 2,000 plus members, but for the ones that do, from a financial perspective, that is more like a large corporation than a church. I mean, even at the low end, I doubt most McDonald's franchises generate $20 million in business each year, yet for a large church, look at their local and national charitable numbers. They're so small they're not even measurable at 0. Only for the medium-sized churches on down are charitable figures even large enough to measure, and even then only barely so. And when taken into context that Christians are supposed to help the less fortunate, this is all rather surprising that so little charity is being given by churches. So let's look at what churches are spending their money on. The top two categories are pastoral and executive salaries at 38% of budgeted expenses and part-time help at 10%. That's a total of approximately 50% of church revenues going towards salaries, and I would take an educated guess that most of that is for the executive or top end of the payroll, just like any other business. Then after building and maintenance expenses, there is hardly any money left over for anything, not to mention charitable activities, which appear to be at the bottom of the list. And though these figures are from 2013, that was just several years after the 2008 financial crisis, when churches should have been stepping up their giving, which apparently didn't happen when the need was much greater, and it's also not likely happening now, at least at the churches I have attended. My question to everyone is, why do you think most churches are so stingy? In Matthew 25, verse 31, we are warned about what happens to those who do not help their fellow brothers and sisters. And in Luke chapter 16, verse 19, we are warned about the fate of the rich man in the purple robe. Yet, the real-life numbers seem to interpret this all a different way. Do you think Christian churches should be more charitable? Please leave your comments below, and thank you for watching.